truly forgot my power.
Do you hear? Wow!
I hear footsteps, trapping on the Murder Lord's stones.
Witness the birth of the Vampire Ascendant!
Mind flayers, children of Bhaal, tyrannical psychopaths, and of course,
Raphael.
there are many different villains in Baldur's Gate 3, so let's take some time to talk about their individual stories, why they operate how they do, and what makes them fantastic foils for your character's story. The main villains that I want to focus on for this video are, of course, the Chosen of the Absolute, as well as the Vampire Lord Cazador and the aforementioned devil, Raphael. Ketheric Thorm, Enver Gortash, Orin the Red. All three of them are ruthless leaders who command the cult of the Absolute, as well as the final boss of the game, the Netherbrain. And each of them are chosen by deities who pilot the Chosen Three in their own unique ways. Let's start with Ketheric. As you explore Act 2, you get a first look at just how deep the cult of the Absolute runs. Ketheric sits on a throne just above a mind flayer colony, where thousands of people were tortured, experimented on, and slaughtered in the depths of Moonrise Towers. Ketheric himself radiates this dark, soulless energy from the moment you meet him. All of that might make you assume that Ketheric actually is soulless, just a vessel meant for destruction. But let's switch tracks for a second. You meet a Selûnite cleric named Isobel around the same time. She uses her power from the goddess of the moon, Selûne, to protect the survivors at the Last Light Inn, and she helps you travel through Act 2's shadow-cursed lands. You come to find out that her love, the Nightsong Dame Aylin, the Aasimar daughter of Selûne, was trapped by none other than Ketheric Thorm, after he turned to the Lady of Loss, Selûne's twin sister, Szarr. Ketheric actually used to be a follower of Selûne before he originally died 100 years ago, but Ketheric spiraled into darkness, succumbing to the goddess he once opposed, all so he could bring back his daughter. All to bring back Isobel. The Harpers, the Druids of the Emerald Grove, and others fought and eventually defeated the army at Moonrise Towers. But now, over a century later, Ketheric is revived by the Lord of Bones, the god known as Myrkul. Their deal results in Isobel being revived and Ketheric becoming Myrkul's chosen. The head of the Thorm family is a terrible person who orchestrated the deaths of many, but spinning his tale away from generic villain into one of tragedy, it works wonders for getting you invested into the tonal shift of Act 2. He is just a father who wants his daughter back, but his selfishness and hatred of Aylin pushed his daughter away a century ago, and it continues to push her away now. I love the dialogue you can have with Ketheric during Act 2's final fight. You can convince him that he is better than this, but his Achilles tendon, Dame Aylin, sparks that anger and fear back into him, and your only option is to finally put him to rest. Orin and Gortash operate in similar but individualistic ways. Gortash is a politician. They're always bad, but you can actually meet his parents in Act 3. And as you talk to them, you find out their robotic nature is because Gortash actually had his own parents implanted with elithid tadpoles so he could control their every move. This is an act of revenge in his eyes, after he took up the mantle of the Chosen for Bane, the god of tyranny. His reason for revenge goes back to his childhood, where his parents sold him to a warlock so they could pay off their debts to the guild in Baldur's Gate. Yeah, dude, I'd become a pissy old man who looks like he's going to Coachella too. Orin, on the other hand, interests me in a way I hadn't realized until I actually started working on this video. It starts with her grandfather, Saravok Anchev. I've heard some say that he feels out of place in this story, and since I haven't played the previous Baldur's Gate games, I can't really speak to that. But in Baldur's Gate 3, he really helps create this idea of being eclipsed in someone else's shadow. Specifically in a Dark Urge playthrough, Orin the Red attempts to dethrone you as the Chosen for the Lord of Murder by, well, murdering you. You have an imminent end coming your way, but you are able to confront Orin in the Temple of Bhaal to either reclaim or denounce your kinship. Orin really just doesn't want to play second fiddle to you, and she feels disregarded, forgotten, and insecure because the Dark Urge was chosen over her. Saravok, in a way, feels the same. If you claim the throne and confront him afterwards, he insists on fighting you to become Bhaal's chosen. And between games, in what I've heard is somewhat controversial, he went from the good side back to Bhaal's side, due to this same insecurity. The Chosen Three are complex. Ketheric sacrifices the many to save the few, Gortash seeks power and revenge rather than healing, and Orin feels overshadowed and overlooked by her own bloodline. However, someone that really shows you that not all of the villains are morally complex is the vampire lord Cazador. He is a huge factor in Astarion's companion story, and that's something that I didn't really get to touch on in my last video, but as the boyfriend to an Astarion lover, I have seen his story play out several times and in many different ways. He comes off as manipulative and selfish in some interactions with him, but he is complex in his own way. His trauma stems from hundreds of years of torment from his former master Cazador. As Astarion was on the brink of death, Cazador turned him into a vampire spawn, and ever since has felt indebted to the Vampire Lord. He was kept in captivity and forced to turn other civilians into vampire spawn like him. And just guess how many times you see Cazador throughout a single playthrough. You see him once in your fight against him, but his presence is felt for the entire game while Astarion is at your side. So when the moment finally comes to slay him, it feels warranted. You walked this path with Astarion, and even though he considers taking Cazador's place, you are able to talk him down because the game shows that relationship between him, your player character, and the party being built. It feels well worth it. Even if Astarion goes a little harder than you might expect when he finally frees himself from his former master's grasp. And finally, I'm just gonna say it. Raphael is a goofy little man, okay? He's a goofy little man. Yeah, he's kind of badass, and yeah, he's got a cool fight. He sings his own theme song. The Sassy Man Apocalypse is alive and well. My favorite thing about him as a villain is very simple. He's connected to the story. I feel complaints levied against some of the other villains in the game are that they are introduced and taken out quickly before moving on to the next villain. That's fair, but Raphael shows up right at the beginning of the game, usually at the Druid's Grove. He wants to strike up a deal, one that you only really find out in the final act. He wants you to return the crown of Karsus to the Hells, to him, as it was stolen and is now used to control the Netherbrain. So boom, there you go. He's connected to the central story of the game and the Chosen Three. That's very cool. But do you want to know my favorite connection that he has? Raphael isn't just connected to the Chosen Three by the crown of Karsus. See, I said earlier that Gortash's parents sold him away to a warlock, but that was a thoughtless oversight on his parents' behalf, because it wasn't a warlock, but instead was our favorite devil of the hells, Raphael. Ultimately, these villains' complexity, their cruelty, and their connections to the overall story really make it so cathartic to finally take them down and give them vengeance. Also, screw Lorroakan. Lorroakan sucks. Thank you for watching the second video on Baldur's Gate 3. If this does well, I would like to make another one. I don't know what about yet, but we'll see. If you have any suggestions or anything, make sure to comment down below. And subscribe. Throw a big old subscribe my way. That would be lovely. And if you haven't seen my other video yet, you should go watch that. It's about how Baldur's Gate 3 is a perfectly sad masterpiece, which it is. So anyways, thanks. This is yoursoncole, signing out.